The ground beneath you feels so still, so certain. You lie in bed, and the weight of your body rests effortlessly on a foundation you never question. Floors, roads, stones, soil, they all seem silent, anchored, permanent. But tonight, as you slow your breath and soften your thoughts, you begin to feel something deeper, something ancient, something slow. Beneath your room, beneath the floor and the soil and the roots of trees, the earth stirs in silence. Not with noise, not with suddenness, but with the slowest breath you've ever imagined. A breath stretched across eons. The ground is not still. It never has been. It moves, glides, and shifts, like skin on warm muscle, like clouds across a moonlit sky. You are lying on the outermost shell of a living planet. This shell is called the crust, and though it feels solid, it is not a single, unbroken piece. It's cracked into massive plates, like the surface of a drying lake bed. These plates are not dead slabs of rock. They are the skin of a planet alive with inner warmth, moving ever so slowly in a dance older than memory. You drift deeper into this thought, imagining the Earth as a sleeping giant. Its crust, fragile yet vast, is like the soft crust of baked bread, crackled and stretched over a warm core. The plates of the Earth fit together like a puzzle, but not perfectly. There are gaps, there are overlaps, and in these invisible seams, the planet whispers. Each continent, Asia, Africa, the Americas, is riding a plate, and each plate is drifting. Not fast, not hurried, but steadily, patiently. Some move apart, some slide beside each other. Others inch closer, pressing together until mountains rise like folded cloth. These movements are not something you would notice in a day or even a lifetime. But over millions of years, they carve the Earth's face anew. You float now in your imagination, high above the globe. You watch the continents drift, not randomly, but slowly, like lily pads across a pond stirred by gentle currents. Africa pulls away from South America, the space between them filling with ocean. India sails north and collides with Asia, lifting the Himalayas like a wrinkle in fabric. You see not chaos but choreography. This dance is called plate tectonics, a hidden engine powered from deep within the Earth. It begins far beneath the crust, in the mantle, where heat rises like the warmth of breath against winter air. That heat sets the plates in motion. It's a quiet energy, not explosive or dramatic. It's more like the gentle pull of tides, or the slow climb of sap in a tree. You imagine this mantle now. A vast, slow-flowing sea of rock, soft only in geological time. You cannot feel it, but it moves, like thick honey warmed from below. And just as honey drifts when heated, so too does the mantle stir, pushing up in places, pulling down in others. These movements push the crust above it, fracturing it, bending it, setting the plates adrift. Your body, resting quietly in your bed, is riding this movement. The floor under you rests on a slab of Earth's crust, and that slab is gliding, perhaps a few centimeters a year, no faster than your fingernails grow. But over millennia, this motion changes everything. Rivers change course. Mountains rise. Oceans open and close. The world you see on maps is just a single frame in a very long film. Continents have joined and broken apart before. They will again. You too are a part of this motion. Your home carried like a boat across a slow and endless sea. And though you cannot feel it, your body knows this movement. In your bones, in your breath, in your blood rich with iron drawn from ancient rocks, you are made of earth. The calcium in your teeth was once part of a buried reef. The oxygen in your lungs is filtered by plants whose roots grip shifting soil. You are not separate from this planet. You are one of its softer layers. As you sink deeper into stillness, you begin to sense the layers below. First, the crust, thin and cracked. Then the mantle, flowing and warm. Then deeper still, the outer core, molten and churning, giving rise to Earth's magnetic field. And at the center, the solid core, a ball of iron spinning quietly like a compass buried in fire. You are held in all of this, not just by gravity but by history, by movement, by connection. You are part of a story that began long before you and will continue long after. Every step you've ever taken has been upon a ground that moves, even as it feels still. And yet, what would happen if this movement stopped? If the plates were to freeze in place? If the mantle cooled and hardened, silencing the breath beneath us? Would the world remain as it is forever? Would mountains stop growing? Would earthquakes vanish? Would the planet grow quieter? Or would it begin to fracture in new, unpredictable ways? These questions float gently now in your resting mind. You do not need to answer them yet. Tonight is for wonder, not worry, because beneath your feet the earth still breathes. And tomorrow, you'll listen more closely to the cracks in its shell, to the way the crust has broken and how the pieces glide, to how this cracked shell tells stories of a world that never sleeps. You lie still. The world above is hushed, and your breath is slow. But deep within the earth, beneath forests and oceans and cities, a quiet drama plays out, one that moves not in minutes or hours but in millions of years. The crust, which once seemed whole, reveals its truth. It is cracked not in chaos but in design. Imagine an eggshell resting on a warm palm. Now picture that palm slowly curling, stretching, shifting. The shell cannot stay whole. Cracks, not into random shards but into large drifting pieces. The earth is much the same. Its crust is fractured into massive segments called tectonic plates. Like puzzle pieces afloat on a restless sea of stone, they fit together, not perfectly, but with purpose. There are about a dozen major plates and many smaller ones. Some carry entire continents on their backs. Others are hidden beneath ocean depths. These plates drift, sometimes pulling away from each other, sometimes pressing together. Their edges are where the story becomes most vivid, where mountains are born, earthquakes rumble, and volcanoes breathe fire. You begin to float downward now, in your imagination, down through soil, through layers of rock, until you reach the base of a continent. Here, where one plate meets another, the crust is restless. It feels like a place holding its breath, silent but full of tension. This is a fault line, where two plates rub shoulders or push against one another. They do not glide smoothly. Their boundaries catch, grip, hold, and when that pressure releases, the earth shakes. You drift along the edge of a plate, tracing the lines like the lifelines of a palm. You move across the San Andreas Fault in California, where the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate grind past each other slowly, barely a few centimeters each year. Yet this gentle pace builds enormous pressure. One day, it releases, and the ground shifts suddenly beneath our feet. The surface may seem calm, covered with trees, homes, and highways, but below, the cracked shell of the planet is never quite still. It's like a sleeping giant with a furrowed brow. The giant isn't waking, not yet, but its breath shifts the ground ever so slightly. And you, nestled in the safety of your home, ride on this restless skin. Now imagine two plates moving toward each other, neither willing to yield. They push and buckle, and in their collision mountains rise. This is how the Himalayas came to be. The Indian plate slowly pressing into the Eurasian plate. Once, the land where Everest now stands was submerged beneath a shallow sea. But as the plates collided, the crust folded upward, lifting ocean floor into sky. And in other places, plates drift apart. Along mid-ocean ridges, the sea floor splits open. New rock wells up like molten ink from a pen, writing new lines on the Earth's face. As the plates separate, the crust is renewed. You are watching the Earth rebuild itself in slow motion, always changing, always alive. There are also places where one plate slides beneath another, slipping under like a falling curtain. This process is called subduction, and it's one of the planet's deepest movements. As a plate descends into the mantle, it melts, feeding volcanoes above. Entire chains of islands like Japan or the Andes are born from these slow, heavy gestures. As you drift between the plates, you sense their edges, not sharp but charged. They press, pull, and slide, constantly negotiating space. The planet's outer shell is not broken in despair, but in transformation. This cracked crust allows the Earth to breathe, to cool, to recycle its insides. It is the way the planet stays alive. And so the cracks are not flaws. They are paths of energy, borders of creation. Without them, the earth would be static, silent, perhaps lifeless. Your body, delicate and soft, floats above this deep machinery. But you are part of it. Your bones contain minerals released by volcanic ash. Your blood holds iron formed in the cores of ancient stars, scattered across the surface by eruptions. You are made of crust and fire and breath and drift. Even now, the plate beneath your home is on a journey. You cannot feel it, but it moves. Perhaps westward. Perhaps north. Perhaps it grinds against a neighbor. Perhaps it carries you toward a future where a mountain may rise, or an ocean may widen. The ground is never fixed. But this is not something to fear. It is something to marvel at, because you live on a planet in motion. And motion, even at its slowest, is the sign of life. So tonight, as your eyes grow heavy and your breath slows to match the quiet rhythm of the earth, let your thoughts drift gently between the plates. Rest on the cracked shell of this sleeping giant and listen for the silence between its movements. And just before sleep finds you completely, let a question settle into your mind. What lies beneath the crust that moves these plates? What warmth? What whisper? What ancient current makes a shell drift like a cloud over stone? Beneath the fractured crust you now know well, beneath the plates that slide and collide in their ancient patient dance, there lies something deeper, something warmer, something older still. You begin to drift downward, slow as a leaf through thick, golden air. Deeper than roots, deeper than stone. You pass through the hard base of the crust and enter the mantle, a vast ocean of rock, not liquid, not solid, but something in between. It does not rush or roar. It moves like breath in deep sleep. Long, slow, invisible. The mantle does not boil or explode. Flows. Like honey warmed under the sun. Like lava caught between sleeping and waking. Its movements are measured in inches over centuries, but they never stop. And these movements, quiet and unseen, are the pulse that shifts entire continents above. You are inside this breath now. You float between currents of hot rock, drifting slowly upward and downward, guided by temperature and pressure. The deeper you go, the hotter it becomes, not in a burning way, but in a slow, pressing warmth that feels eternal. This is where the story of plate tectonics begins. Not on the surface, where mountains rise and quakes occur, but here in the silence below. The mantle makes no sound. But if it did, it would speak in whispers, deep, low murmurs, stretched across millions of years. It whispers in convection, the gentle churning of warmer material rising, cooler material sinking. You've seen this before, in a pot of soup, in the sky's clouds, in the flow of a candle's smoke. But here in rock, this same motion sculpts continents. You hover near a mantle plume, a column of warmth rising steadily toward the surface. It pushes upward like an invisible fountain, bringing energy from the depths. When this plume touches the crust, it may cause the ground above to swell, fracture, even erupt. This is how islands like Hawaii are born, from the breath of the earth rising in silence, lifting land from ocean. Elsewhere, in vast stretches beneath oceans, mantle heat spreads outward, pushing plates apart at mid-ocean ridges. New crust forms as magma surfaces and cools, slowly widening the ocean basin. You imagine the earth exhaling here, gently, continuously, building new ground from the inside out. The mantle also takes in. Where plates collide and one sinks beneath the other, the cooler, denser plate descends into the mantle's embrace. This is called subduction, and it's a form of recycling. Old crust returns home, melting back into the warmth that made it. The earth does not waste, it renews. And as you drift through this dynamic layer, you realize something beautiful. The mantle is the engine of the planet, and yet it asks for no attention. Moves without light, shapes without sound. Its rhythms are invisible to our brief lives, yet essential to all life above. The continents owe their motion to the mantle's slow currents. Volcanoes erupt because of its pressure. Earthquakes begin where the mantle pushes the crust to its limit. Even the magnetic field that shelters you from solar wind begins here, in Earth's heated heart, stirred by deep molten currents even lower than this. Your mind begins to soften at this thought. The idea that something so gentle in motion could be so powerful in consequence. The mantle does not shake the ground. It simply whispers. And the plates above obey. Its language is not spoken but felt. In the rising of land, in the stretching of seas, in the growth of mountain ranges over unimaginable time. And though you lie still tonight, you too are part of this whisper. The iron in your blood comes from mantle-born eruptions long ago. The soil that grows your food was lifted by forces that began here. The ground beneath your feet is only the skin stretched over this warm, slow breath. You begin to feel the warmth beneath your thoughts. A kind of comfort, knowing that even the deepest parts of the earth are in motion, carrying out their quiet labor without hurry or rest. And as you gently rise back toward the crust, carried on currents of thought and stone, a new question begins to surface. One shaped by the pressure, the collision, the journey of rock through heat and time. What happens when two drifting plates meet? When continents kiss, fold, and rise? When this whisper becomes a touch strong enough to shape mountains? You are resting now in a gentle rhythm, like the slow rising and falling of breath. The world around you feels still, but deep inside, time folds itself into stone. You drift, weightless in thought, carried on slow currents beneath the surface. You have followed the cracked crust. You have listened to the mantle's slow whisper. And now you arrive at a moment older than memory. A meeting of giants. Continents move, but not with rush or rage. They drift like ancient ships upon a sea of rock. And sometimes these drifting lands meet, not in a clash, but in a deep, silent press. Like two hands slowly coming together, their edges folding and resisting. This is not violence. This is patience shaped into stone. Imagine India millions of years ago, far from where it is today. Once part of a southern supercontinent, it drifted northward over eons, floating across the Indian Ocean on its tectonic plate. Quietly, steadily, it moved toward Asia, like a leaf carried by invisible tides. And when it arrived, it did not stop. It pressed forward into the larger landmass, into Eurasia, and the Earth responded, not with cracks but with curves. You hover now above the Himalayas, the roof of the world. Their jagged peaks slice into sky, but their story began beneath an ancient sea. This place, once soft and blue with ocean, has risen skyward, folded by the pressure of time. The mountains you see are not the result of a sudden event, but of ongoing embrace. India pressing into Asia, stone folding upon stone. You imagine the earth as fabric. When pushed from two ends, it creases. That crease becomes a ridge, then a range, then a towering wall of peaks. Each layer of rock, once horizontal, now tilts and curls, pressed upward into the cold air. This is orogeny, the birth of mountains. It is not a single moment. It is millions of years written in stone. But even as the land rises, it does not settle. Plates still move. The mountains still grow, almost imperceptibly. Everest, the tallest of them all, rises a few millimeters each year, like a breath drawn in slow motion. And occasionally, the pressure along the plate boundary releases in a shudder. An earthquake, a brief reminder that even great mountains are in motion. You rest on a ledge now, high above this vast range, feeling the weight of time pressed into every fold of rock. These peaks are not just stone. They are memory. Memory of oceans dried and floors lifted. Memory of lands drawn together by the deep pull of the mantle below. The air here is thin and cold, but the story is warm, alive with motion. Far away you sense another collision. Africa is nudging into Europe, creating the Alps. Australia is inching toward Southeast Asia. Even now, new mountains are being born, not in the roar of eruption, but in the silence of pressure. The planet never stops shaping itself, never stops folding its skin into new forms. And as you lie back into thought, you begin to see that collisions are not always destruction. Sometimes they are creation. They bring together what was once apart. They build, they elevate, they give rise to new heights. You are a part of this process in your own small way. The calcium in your bones, the minerals in your teeth, they were once part of mountains. Perhaps even these mountains, worn down by wind and rain, carried by rivers, taken in by soil, and eventually into your body. You are not separate from the land. You are a continuation of it. The earth does not forget its past, folds it, lifts it, presses it into form. And you, soft and human, carry a trace of that deep remembering in your cells. You are made of pressure, patience, of stories told not in words, but in layers. You lie now between the ridges of ancient rock, your thoughts quiet, your breath steady. The world above you sleeps. But beneath, the plates continue their slow embrace. You feel it, a deep and silent movement, unhurried and eternal. And just before you drift into sleep, another question begins to take shape. What happens beneath the ocean, where the crust splits open, where the earth grows new skin, even as the old is pulled away? You drift downward, slipping beneath waves that rock the moonlit surface of the sea. Above, the water is restless, moved by wind and tide, but below, a quieter story unfolds. You leave behind the light, the coral gardens, the dancing shoals of fish, and enter a darker realm, where the earth renews itself in silence. Here, beneath miles of water, the ocean floor is not a flat and featureless plain. It is alive with ridges and rifts, valleys and mountains, just like the land above, but hidden in shadow. You reach the mid-ocean ridge, a seam where two tectonic plates slowly pull apart, opening space for something new to rise. This is where the planet breathes out. Molten rock from the mantle, warmed for millions of years, rises like a whisper through cracks in the crust. It spills out slowly, glowing and soft, and cools in the cold water of the deep. As it cools, it hardens into new crust, young and fresh, full of heat and promise. You are watching the earth make new skin. This process is called seafloor spreading, though there is no rush, no splashing, no sound. Only the slow opening of a wound that does not bleed, only heals. The plates move away from each other, pulled by forces far below, and in the space between, the mantle gives birth to rock. It is one of the earth's quiet miracles. You float now above this vast, submerged mountain range that circles the globe like a scar, twisting through oceans, taller than the Rockies, longer than any chain on land. These ridges are the world's stitching line, where torn plates are sewn anew. But creation always has a mirror. And just as the ocean floor is born in some places, it is taken away in others. Far across the seabed, the crust travels slowly outward from the ridge, cooling as it goes. It becomes heavier, denser, older. And then, at the edge of an ocean, it begins to fall, sinking beneath another plate in a slow, graceful descent. This is a subduction zone, where the crust is recycled, pulled down into the mantle that once formed it. You float above a deep trench now, a narrow gash in the ocean floor, darker than night. These trenches are the deepest parts of the Earth's surface, farther below sea level than Everest is above it. The Mariana Trench, in the western Pacific, is nearly 7 miles deep. If you dropped a stone here, it would fall for more than an hour before touching bottom. Yet even in this crushing darkness, the planet is alive. Microbes feed on minerals in the rocks. Strange fish flicker in the pressure. And the crust continues its journey downward, disappearing into the warmth that will one day send it back up in another form. You begin to see the ocean floor not as a map, but as a great conveyor belt, always moving, always changing. Born in ridges, spread outward, consumed in trenches. The earth does not hoard its surface. It remakes it constantly, letting go of the old, creating the new. And just like the continents, the oceans shift. They widen and narrow, deepen and shallow. The Atlantic Ocean, once a narrow rift, grows wider every year as the plates pull apart. The Pacific, in contrast, is slowly shrinking, its crust disappearing into subduction zones along its edges. You float above this quiet exchange, ridges and trenches, creation and return, and you feel the rhythm in your own breath. Inhale, exhale, grow, release. Even the solid earth follows a cycle. The sea hides these processes from sight, but not from memory. Ancient ocean crust carries a record of magnetic reversals, stripes frozen in rock like tree rings of the seafloor. They whisper of changes in the Earth's magnetic field, of past ages, of time layered beneath the waves. And as you rest in this deep, dark stillness, you understand that the Earth is not only a place of mountains and valleys, but also of motion and memory. The ocean floor beneath you is younger than the continents, constantly rewritten by the planet's inner breath. You drift upward now toward the light, carried by a gentle thought. What becomes of the pressure built where these plates meet? When their edges stick, resist, and then release. Beneath your feet, the ground rests, but it is never still. You walk across landscapes that feel eternal, unshaken. Mountains cradle the sky. Valleys yawn beneath them. Cities hum softly, anchored in stone. But beneath this quiet skin, something waits. Not with impatience, not with rage. It waits with a kind of stillness that only pressure knows. Slow, growing, invisible. You are standing on a puzzle of plates. Each piece of the Earth's crust pushes, slides, and collides. And like breath held too long, tension builds in the silence. Deep along fractures in the crust, the fault lines, the Earth collects strain. Tiny shifts add up. The pressure gathers, hidden, like a whispered promise waiting to be fulfilled. You place your palm on a rock, warm from the day. Feels solid. But solid is not the same as steady. Even stone remembers movement. Over years, decades, centuries, the plates creep a few centimeters each year, grinding past each other. But when they cannot slide smoothly, when resistance wins, energy is stored like a bent branch, curled and tight. And then, it lets go. Not with fury, but with relief. An earthquake is the Earth releasing what it can no longer hold. A sudden breath exhaled from miles below. The ground ripples. Buildings sway like grass. Water in a glass trembles with invisible rhythm. Everything that once seemed anchored now moves in slow motion. The quake itself begins quietly, a fracture that races through stone. Seismic waves ripple outward, like ripples in a still pond after a single dropped pebble. First come the primary waves, fast and sharp, the ones that arrive like a knock at the door. Then come the slower rolling waves, the ones that make chandeliers swing and floors undulate like waves at sea. You may not hear them with your ears, but your body knows. The bones in your legs feel the echo. Your chest holds a pause you didn't mean to take. And for a moment everything is listening. Not in fear, in reverence. 'Cause this is how the Earth speaks. Not in sentences or words, but in pulses and patterns. In the language of pressure and release. Seismographs, like sensitive ears, translate these underground conversations into inked curves on paper, jagged yet elegant. The Earth's signature, captured mid-sentence. Each quake tells a story of what lies beneath. Some are shallow and sharp, their energy spent near the surface. Others begin deep, miles below, their tremors softened by distance but not erased. And some, the great ones, are vast enough to move coastlines, lift sea floors, and bend time in the memory of generations. But even the smallest tremor is meaningful. It is the Earth reminding you that it is alive. And it's not just destruction. Sometimes, the release reshapes the land in ways that nurture. Rivers may shift. Springs may surface. New ridges may form where there were none. What feels like chaos can be the start of something new. A reset, a realignment. You think about animals. How they sense before we do. Birds fall silent. Dogs grow restless. Elephants turn and walk away from coasts before tsunamis come. Their bodies, tuned to vibrations we have forgotten, seem to hear the deeper frequencies of the world. Maybe once we too understood that language. Maybe we still do, in dreams, in bones, in the hush before the quake. The aftershocks come like echoes, softer but still speaking. They remind you that release is not a single moment. It is a process. It takes time for everything to settle into its new shape. Buildings must be inspected, roads repaired, hearts must steady. Yet through it all, the Earth does not apologize, does not regret. It simply continues to move, as it always has, as it must. You lie back and close your eyes. The ground is still now, but you know that stillness is only part of the rhythm. Beneath the quiet, something is always moving, always shifting, always preparing to speak again. And so you wonder, if the earth speaks in pressure and release, what does it whisper when fire joins the breath of stone? You lie on the slope of an ancient mountain, warm rock beneath your back, stars above. The air carries the faint smell of sulfur, of stone-made vapor. Somewhere nearby, the earth breathes fire. Beneath the still surface of the crust, the story is not quiet, glows. You are floating now, as if in a dream, through the skin of the planet, descending into its warmer depths. You pass through layers of rock pressed tight with age, then deeper into a world lit from within. Here, in great chambers beneath volcanoes, magma pulses like a heart. Liquid rock, dense, slow, glowing orange and red, shifts in silence. It is not angry. It is not cruel. Simply is. It carries the memory of the planet's formation. It is Earth's blood, still hot from its birth. Volcanoes are the Earth's way of speaking from below. Not with words, but with pressure and fire, with heat that cannot stay buried. When magma pushes upward, through weaknesses in the crust, it gathers, swells. Then suddenly it erupts like breath too long held. You watch from a safe distance, in your dreaming state, as a volcano opens. Ash spills into the sky in great plumes. Lava pours down the sides, glowing in the dark, slow as honey but heavy as mountains. It is beautiful and terrifying, a ballet of creation and collapse. But this is not only destruction. It is not merely the end of something. This is how islands are born. This is how soil becomes rich. This is how earth renews its skin. The lava, once cooled, becomes new rock. Over time, plants will grow there. Tiny roots will find cracks, moss will spread, and then trees. The land will be lush. Life follows fire patiently again and again. You walk through an ancient lava field now, hardened into black stone. It looks frozen like the surface of another planet. But already, life is returning. Small green shoots pushing through cracks, fungi blooming like thoughts beneath the surface. Renewal has begun. Inside the volcano, pressure builds in patterns, not chaos. Magma rises in plumes like underwater currents, driven by heat from the planet's core. Gases bubble and expand. Crystals form, suspended in molten rock. Sometimes the buildup is gentle, releasing in slow, oozing flows. Sometimes it's sudden, explosive, a storm of rock and ash. You imagine standing at the rim of Mount Etna, or watching the glow of Kilauea under a moonlit sky. You picture the ancient eruptions of Mount Vesuvius, when cities vanished beneath ash, yet were also preserved in its embrace. Volcanoes give and take in equal measure. And the ash, such a delicate word for something so powerful. It rises miles into the sky, carried on wind, circling the globe, cools the atmosphere. It fertilizes forests and ocean away. Each grain is a tiny fragment of Earth's voice, scattered across the sky like dark snow. Volcanoes also shape the sea. Beneath the oceans, ridges crack and spill lava. Entire mountains form underwater, rising slowly until they breach the surface, becoming islands. The Hawaiian Islands, each one a message from a plume of deep mantle heat, are stepping stones left by a drifting plate over a fixed point of fire. Even in Antarctica, under ice miles thick, volcanoes sleep. And on other worlds too, Mars, Venus, even some moons, ancient volcanoes tell us they once had hot hearts. There is something ancient and sacred about this force. You feel it not as violence, but as necessity. The way a heartbeat must continue, the way steam must rise from boiling water. The earth must exhale, must speak, must shape and reshape its own surface. If it stopped, something would be wrong. You run your fingers along cooled lava, tracing its ripples and folds. This was once liquid. This once moved like breath. Now it is still but not silent. The story remains in texture, in pattern, in the feel of its cooled skin. And so, volcanoes are not just features of geography. They are letters. Each eruption, each flow, each plume, a word written in fire, a line of poetry in ash and stone. The earth writes slowly, but it writes with power. You close your eyes and feel warmth still radiating through the stone. You wonder, if the earth speaks in fire and pressure, what might it whisper through the ocean's slow, steady tides? You lie on a soft bed of moss, nestled on the back of a slow-moving continent. Beneath you, the ground is alive, though you feel no tremor now. But deep within, massive plates of rock shift, push, pull, drifting like ancient rafts on a glowing sea. This movement is slow, slower than your fingernails grow, yet it has shaped everything you see. Continents don't sit still. They wander. They bump into each other. They crack apart. Their motion, though gentle in human time, is powerful across eons. It is this motion that sculpts Earth's face. But tonight you drift into a thought. What if it stopped? What if, in some great pause, the tectonic plates froze in place, no longer colliding, sliding, or sinking? What if the breath of Earth, long and patient, simply held? You begin to float through this vision, gliding above a frozen world. The continents are still now, as if someone pressed pause on the geologic clock. No more earthquakes rattle the crust. Volcanoes fall silent, their magma trapped in cooling chambers beneath. Mountains cease to rise. Oceans no longer widen or shrink. At first, the quiet feels peaceful. The stillness is gentle, serene. You move through vast landscapes of unchanging form. But slowly, a deeper awareness grows. This calm is not alive. It is not breathing. It is not becoming. Without moving plates, the rock cycle halts. The conveyor belt that recycles crust into mantle and mantle into crust goes still. No more fresh rock is born from volcanoes. No more ocean floor dives into the mantle, carrying carbon and nutrients with it. Even the air would change. For millions of years, volcanoes have breathed out carbon dioxide, shaping climate and feeding the carbon cycle that keeps Earth warm and alive. Without eruptions, without subduction, carbon becomes trapped. Over long stretches of time, the atmosphere cools, then quiets. The Earth exhales no more. You float over a mountain range that no longer grows. Its peaks, once young and jagged, are now weathered, worn down by wind and time. With no fresh uplift, they slowly crumble into plains. One day they will be gone. And in the ocean trenches, where old seafloor once plunged into Earth's hot mantle, there is now only stagnation. The seafloor ages in place, growing heavy, but it has nowhere to go. The great underwater recycling system is broken. Even life feels this stillness. Without tectonic activity, the cycle of nutrients, from ocean depths to shallow seas to land, falters. Hydrothermal vents, once rich with life in the dark sea, go cold. The chemical engines at the base of strange food webs shut down. Life above continues for a time, but slowly, quietly, it begins to dwindle. Forests thin. Coral reefs bleach. Soil, without volcanic minerals to enrich it, becomes less fertile. The planet doesn't die all at once, but its breath becomes shallow. You wander a silent coastline where once, long ago, plates collided to form cliffs and ridges. Now, the shoreline erodes gently, predictably. No new land is made. The seas rise, slowly drowning low coasts, but no mountain rises to greet them. Time continues, but nothing becomes new. You walk through a city of stone, long abandoned, its walls half swallowed by sand and vine. Beneath it, the crust lies unchanged. There is no earthquake to shake the stones loose. No volcano to bury the ruins in ash and preserve them. Time is kind here, and yet unyielding. You begin to miss the motion, the quiet, slow dance that made the world complex. You think of all the drama plates bring, the way they crash to form Himalayas, how they spread apart to birth new oceans, how they grind sideways to create rifts and tremors. These movements, so vast and slow, brought the raw materials for life to flourish. Without them, the Earth is a sculpture, perfect in its shape but lifeless in its stillness. Even Earth's magnetic field begins to weaken. Without the circulation of molten metals in the outer core, stirred in part by the slow dance of plates above. The magnetic shield that protects us from cosmic winds begins to fade. More radiation seeps in. The sky is still blue, but it bites. You drift into space now, looking down at this world you know. Its surface is smoother now. Fewer mountains, gentler valleys. The scars of plate movement have healed, and in doing so, the Earth has lost its memory. Each plate once carried the story of time. Fossils, mountains, islands, and deep ocean trenches. Now, the planet is a sphere of stillness, beautiful but silent. No new continents will ever form. No volcano will ever paint the sky. No earthquake will ever remind the Earth that it moves. And slowly, the heat at the planet's core, once churned and expressed by the movement above, cools. Proud. Mused. Fire burning out. You return to yourself, lying on the mossy ground again. The stars still shine above you. And beneath your body the plates are still moving. Gently, slowly, eternally. Reshaping, renewing, remembering. And you feel grateful. Grateful for the tremble, the shift, the unexpected cracks in the world that let light and life emerge. Because without movement there is no story, no tension, no possibility. You breathe in the still night air. Somewhere deep below, a plate is pressing into another. Somewhere a volcano sighs. Somewhere the Earth is making something new. And as you listen, a question begins to form. If the ground beneath us can drift, reshape, and transform, what might the oceans, too, be hiding beneath their surface silence? You are drifting through silence. Not the silence of night or snow or sleep, but the deeper silence of a world that has stopped moving. The Earth, which once hummed with slow geological rhythm, now lies still beneath you. No shifting plates, no drifting continents, no volcanic sighs, no whisper of tectonic breath beneath your feet. You imagine a frozen Earth. Not icy, not frigid in weather, but frozen in spirit. The crust, solid and unmoving, is like a held breath that never releases. At first glance, it is peaceful. The oceans are calm. The skies are clear. Mountains stand, aging gently, without earthquakes to test their strength. But you begin to feel something else. Something underneath the calm. Something missing. Motion is the lifeblood of a planet. Without it, Earth's great cycles falter. You imagine the carbon cycle, which breathes through volcanic eruptions and subducting plates. Now broken. No new carbon rises to the sky. No deep-sea floor melts into magma to feed the process again. Over time, the atmosphere changes. Not in an instant, but gradually, like a candle burning out in slow motion. Without plate tectonics, the air grows thinner in life. Cooler. More still. Photosynthesis, that quiet miracle, becomes harder for plants without fresh nutrients from Earth's deep kitchen. The balance shifts. The greening begins to fade. The oceans, too, change. Without tectonic churning, the chemical ladders that connect the seafloor to the surface stop forming. Hydrothermal vents, once glowing chimneys of mineral-rich warmth, fade to black. Creatures that lived by their light, ancient, eyeless, mysterious, vanish one by one. Their food chain has snapped. And yet, the surface remains quiet. Nothing dramatic, no explosions, no storms. Just stillness. A serenity that, over time, begins to feel like loss. You wander now across a landscape of stone. Smooth, wind-worn, softened by time. No new peaks rise to the sky. No new valleys carve into the earth. The planet's face becomes older, flatter, simpler. The drama of birth and collision has passed. Deep below, the mantle still swirls, slowly, like a forgotten dream. It remembers motion, even if the crust above has stilled. And over time, this forgetting becomes dangerous. You pause. You listen. The silence isn't peace, it's pressure. In a world where nothing moves, heat builds. Deep inside, Earth's core still radiates energy, still churns with radioactive decay. But without tectonic plates to vent its breath, without volcanoes, without subduction, the pressure stays locked in. It is not a loud danger. Not yet. It is slow. Like sorrow kept in for too long. You picture the crust, unmoving, acting like a sealed lid on a simmering pot. The heat rises from below, but it cannot escape. The crust thickens in some places, thins in others. Micro cracks begin to form, not from movement but from its absence. Then, without warning, something gives. Not a quake, not a shudder like we know them, but a long, slow break. A fracture in the silence. You are hovering now above a rift that tears slowly across a continent. No one caused it. No collision triggered it. The land simply couldn't hold its stillness anymore. Molten rock begins to seep upward, not in a violent eruption, but in a slow ooze, like a memory returning after centuries of silence. This is not tectonic rebirth. It's tectonic rebellion. The planet, long frozen, begins to crack open from the inside. And with each crack, Earth begins to remember itself. You imagine ancient rift valleys opening again, like Africa's Great Rift or Iceland's volcanic seams, places where the planet once stretched and breathed. These places may form again, even in a frozen world, not through the elegant choreography of plate motion, but through raw, internal insistence. Life around these cracks may cling to existence. Some organisms are drawn to heat, to minerals, to change. But the balance is unstable. Without true tectonic cycling, this new heat is wild, unstructured, erratic. It brings no long-term renewal. And still, much of the planet remains locked. The crust breaks in places, but it does not dance, does not drift. And so, Earth's memory fades. You run your fingers through the soil of a long-dead forest. The trees once stood tall here, fed by volcanic ash that brought nutrients from Earth's deep heart. But the ash no longer falls. The soil no longer renews. The forest thins, then vanishes. Above, the stars remain. The moon circles unchanged. From a distance, Earth still shines blue. Still beautiful. But it is a still beauty. A sculpture, not a song. You begin to walk again, along the edge of a sleeping fault line. It hasn't moved in 1,000 years. Or 10,000. Or more. Once it might have split mountains or shaken cities. Now it waits, unused, like an old trail forgotten by time. And yet, beneath your feet, the mantle stirs. The core pulses. The energy is still there, hidden, waiting. You begin to feel a sense of longing, not for disaster or eruption or chaos, but for rhythm, for breath, for becoming, for the quiet hum of a living world that makes and remakes itself again and again. Because stillness, too long held, becomes brittle. A planet that never changes is a planet that slowly forgets how to live. As you lie back once more, feeling the coolness of stone under your spine, you imagine what might come next. Not just for Earth, but for you, for life, for the story of change. And just before you drift into sleep, a question rises gently in your thoughts. If Earth breaks even in stillness, what hidden forces might be shaping the silent oceans below? You lie still now, as if resting on the back of something ancient and vast. A creature older than memory, older than sky, older than your bones. The earth, beneath you, hums in a language not spoken but felt. And as your breath slows, you begin to understand. This world is not silent, it is dreaming. You drift between layers, from cool air to warm soil, down into stone. The crust wraps around you like a blanket of continents and oceans. It seems solid, unmoving, but you know the truth now. It's always shifting, always whispering. Every mountain is a sentence paused mid-thought. Every valley is a sigh, a pause, a breath held and slowly exhaled. You sink further, into the slow rivers of the mantle. This is where Earth turns its thoughts over. Slowly, ponderously, like a sleeper rearranging a dream. Tectonic plates float on this liquid rock, pushed by heat rising from the core like a memory that refuses to fade. They collide, they slide, they drift apart like lovers once close, now distant. And from these motions, entire stories unfold. Without movement there is no life. The continents would never have danced together and apart. Never joined to form supercontinents. Never drifted to form islands. Never shaped the world we now know, a living, breathing mosaic. Volcanoes would not rise. Mountains would not climb toward the stars. Earthquakes would not crack open silence to let tension speak. And beneath it all, carbon would not circulate. The crust would stiffen. The oceans would freeze. Life, intricate, persistent life, would fade into stillness. So you listen differently now. To the low groans of the planet beneath your feet. To the tremors that nudge cities awake. To the hot breaths of magma that build islands in the sea. What once felt like danger now feels like language. Earth's way of saying, I am alive, am changing, I remember. You think of the continents as drifting thoughts. Pangaea, Gondwana, Laurasia, worlds within the world now broken apart, now searching for new arrangements. Every forest, every desert, every coast has been sculpted by this long sleepwalk. Not random, not chaotic, but dreamy, slow, full of ancient logic. You too are shaped by this motion. The calcium in your bones once settled in oceans, formed when plates split apart. The oxygen you breathe came from plants that grew on land formed by colliding crust. Even your heartbeat echoes rhythms, born in the pulse of planetary heat. The mantle dreams in spirals. Currents churn over millennia. Rock melts, rises, cools, sinks. It is a never-ending meditation. No hurry, no beginning, no final end. Just the comfort of constant becoming. And the core, oh the core, glows like a candle no wind can touch. Iron and nickel pressed so tightly that they spin within themselves. This inner sun does not flicker. It pulses quietly. A heart deep inside the earth's dreaming chest. It is this pulse that fuels the mantle, that lifts the continents, that draws life upward like a tide. You rest easy now, knowing that destruction is only half the story. Yes, plates crash. Yes, magma spills. Yes, cities crumble. But what breaks also builds. What burns also clears the way. And what shakes us also wakes us. You float above a volcano, its plume a letter written in heat and ash. You drift through fault lines, where the crust splits not in rage, but in tension too long held. You walk across continents, each one moving ever so slowly. Half an inch this year, an inch the next. A motion so soft it feels like stillness. And yet, over time, oceans appear where mountains once stood. Islands rise, valleys deepen, change accumulates quietly, like snow falling at night. You return now to the surface of your thoughts, up from the core through the mantle, past the crust that cradles you. You feel the ground beneath your bed, cool, unmoving but no longer static. You understand that even this stillness is a dance. The earth is not fighting itself. It is listening to itself, adjusting its weight, rebalancing the stories held in stone. Its faults are not flaws but flexibilities. Its fire is not rage but renewal. You are held by a planet that dreams of rivers and mountains, of green valleys and drifting snow. It does not sleep like you do, but it dreams just the same. In magma, in motion, in time. You inhale slowly. The air smells like night and soil and something older still. You are not separate from the earth's motion. You are part of the story it tells. Part of the fire, the pressure, the release, the renewal. And as your eyes close, you imagine this globe turning slowly beneath the stars. A sphere of rock wrapped in ocean and light, spinning in space, dreaming of forests, of creatures, of you. You dream with it, not as an observer, but as one of the sparks held in its deep breath. Motion becomes memory. Memory becomes meaning. And somewhere, deep within the mantle, a ripple begins again.